Part 1. The sky tore open. They came without warning. One moment, Earth's orbit was a tranquil belt of satellites and silence, a ribbon of cold emptiness wrapped in the black velvet of space. The next, it was a wound. The sky itself split open, not with light, but with pressure, as if reality had been forced to bend around something far too large, far too wrong to belong. The first sign wasn't even visible. It was a pulse, no, a crack, ripping across every deep space sensor like thunder beneath water. Then, as instruments scrambled to stabilize, came the flicker. The arrival of mass, impossible in scope, coordinated and perfect in its formation. The Varn Dominion had arrived. Not scouts, not diplomats, warships. They didn't send messages, no diplomatic envoys, no pretense of peace, just a singular data burst, translated instantly by every known linguistic system into one word: submit. The message didn't need elaboration. It was a verdict, not a negotiation. Earth's time was up, and they expected the world to kneel. The Varn had crushed civilizations that had ruled star clusters before humans had even discovered electricity. Their ships were sleek crescents of antimatter energy and godlike force, known across the galaxy as instruments of extinction. The Lurons had fallen in 3 days. The K-Tech moons had been glassed in hours. Resistance meant annihilation. Acceptance meant servitude. And Earth was nothing to them. Humanity had only just begun its real expansion into the stars. The United Nations of Earth was still struggling to coordinate colonial governance. The first interstellar fleet wasn't even fully assembled. Orbital defense platforms around new colonies were incomplete, half of them still being tested. It was like placing scarecrows on the front lines of an apocalypse. Still, something about the speed of the attack felt deliberate. Admiral Rawthorne was the first to recognize the pattern. From her position aboard the orbital command platform, Athena, she reviewed the sensor data with the cold precision of a surgeon. She didn't speak at first, only watched as the Varn ships slid into the Omega-6 formation, standard protocol for planetary extermination. "We have 2 hours," she finally said, her voice disturbingly calm for what she was looking at. This is not a drill. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Every soldier across Earth's fragmented defense grid had heard the legends. The Varn didn't occupy. They didn't negotiate. They erased. Resistance was often met with firestorms so intense they left planetary cores molten. The message was always the same: fight and be forgotten. And now it was Earth's turn. Yet, this world was different. What the Varn didn't understand, what they couldn't possibly measure, was the rage. Not anger, not resistance. Rage. The fury that simmers when a species knows its end has been scheduled by something that doesn't even care to explain why. Down on Earth, across military bases and underground bunkers, across spaceports and mining stations, humans prepared. Not because they believed they could win, but because surrender was never part of the design. This wasn't expansion for power. Humanity didn't spread to dominate. They spread because survival demanded it. War was never luxury, it was necessity, and humans had learned to turn desperation into doctrine. Admiral Thorne watched the final war room feed come online. A chaotic cascade of alerts, mobilizations, drone deployments, and the patchwork reassembly of every usable asset Earth had left. She pressed a finger to her earpiece. "Activate all fleets, protocol Skyfire, every ship, every drone, every pilot we've got." "Understood," came the reply. She looked again at the Varn formation. Hundreds of ships glowing like a second constellation. It was beautiful in the way tsunamis are beautiful. Deadly, inevitable, and beyond reason. "God help us," whispered one of her junior officers. Thorne didn't answer. Because deep inside, she wasn't praying for help. She was preparing to show the Varn something they had never seen before. Not strategy, not diplomacy. Humanity unbroken. And in the shadows of Saturn's rings, something ancient and unfinished began to stir. Part 2. The Fury of Earth. Captain Jackson Ray stood on the command deck of the Nox Eternus, Earth's newest battleship, and barely finished. The ship still smelled of hot wiring and fresh welds, a Frankenstein vessel stitched together by engineers who hadn't had time to name half the systems. Exposed panels lined the corridors. The targeting AI was still updating in real time. The hull, unpainted, raw, scorched in spots from recent engine tests. And yet, this was humanity's front line. Jackson glanced around at his crew. They weren't veterans. They weren't even standard. Engineers pulled from Mars, cadets drafted from lunar academies, mechanics who'd signed up 2 weeks ago, young, sleepless, under-equipped, but burning with something the Varn had never encountered before. Rage. "We're the distraction," Jackson muttered to himself, then louder to the bridge. "They expect us to break, fold like every other species. We won't." Behind him, the central tactical screen lit up in a cascade of incoming alerts. The Varn's diamond-shaped war fleet had locked into Omega-6 extermination formation, each vessel humming with antimatter energy. Every ship was a predator, sleek, elegant, and mathematically flawless. The Nox Eternus was the opposite of flawless, but it was alive. Elsewhere across the system, Earth's fleet began to rise. From the shadows of Saturn's rings, from Mars's buried hangars, from Pluto's icy dark, ships stirred, not sleek, not unified, experimental gunboats. Cargo freighters refitted with rail cannons. Orbital mining rigs converted into spike throwers. It was chaos. But it was human chaos, fueled by instinct and fury. And it moved. Admiral Thorne's command came through the fleet-wide channel. Formation Delta, disperse, mask heat signatures, activate drone swarm protocols. Jackson acknowledged and turned to his pilot. Run the Reapers. On cue, General Hosino's drone squadron surged into the void, thousands of AI-augmented machines spiraling through space in a steel storm. Each one armed with EMP bursts timed to the millisecond, designed not to destroy, but to crack shields open an arctic boat just long enough. The Helios cruiser followed, glowing in synchronized pulses. Its neural pilot system, illegal in half the galaxy, linked the thoughts of its crew, giving them reaction speeds Varn warships couldn't comprehend. It didn't move like a ship. It flowed like a living current. Then came the Spectre. It didn't show up on radar, didn't send a ping, just a chill that spread through the communication networks. A name whispered more than announced. A vessel not on Earth's official registry. Theorized, denied, feared. Rumor said it had no commander. Others whispered her name. Nyla Voss, a cybernetic ghost. A rogue operative. A relic of black projects long buried. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was this. She was out there, and she was waiting. Jackson gritted his teeth. The Varn were advancing, steady, unchanging, predictable. That would be their mistake. Earth didn't fight fair. The first offensive wasn't a weapon. It was a lie, a data burst laced with false heat signatures and ghost ships, all coded in a language no Varn system could decipher. Archaic human C++. The Varn sensors flickered, adjusted. Then, for 10 seconds, saw phantoms. Thousands of ships that didn't exist. That was enough. Jackson raised his hand. Now, the Nox Eternus surged forward. Not cleanly, not symmetrically. It spun like a dying starfish, chaotic and off-pattern, the way no alien fleet would ever move. Across space, other ships joined, not in formation, but in madness. Missiles without guidance, kinetic rods flung at ungodly speeds, EMP clusters detonated at precise gravitational intersections. Some human ships didn't even have shields. They were flying coffins loaded with spike charges. But the Varn had never seen anything like it. One cruiser, sleek and glimmering, moved to intercept a corvette and was bisected mid-flight by a uranium rail spike the size of a telephone pole. Another tried to lock weapons and was blinded by a cloud of orbital dust laced with reflective glass and debris. The battlefield wasn't clean anymore. It was the alley behind a burning city, where nothing made sense and everything could kill you. Inside the Nox Eternus, Lieutenant Cora Hale gasped. "They're not adapting fast enough," she whispered, eyes scanning data. "It's like they weren't expecting us to actually fight." "No," Jackson said, his voice low. "They were expecting soldiers." He looked out at the chaos, ships burning, drones spinning. "But we're not soldiers. We're survivors. And survivors don't follow rules." Part 3, Ghosts from the Shadows. The silence before the next strike was thick, electric. Inside the Nox Eternus, the hum of the ship was broken only by the click of fingers on consoles. The soft buzz of overworked systems trying to keep up with the chaos unfolding outside. Jackson Reese stood still, his eyes locked on the countdown hovering in red over the central screen. Not from fear, from rhythm. Focus. A beat, like a war drum deep inside his chest. The AI voice spoke, calm and uncaring. Varn fleet within orbital strike range. Jackson's jaw flexed. Then let's give them the welcome they don't expect. He didn't need permission. He didn't need fanfare. His crew understood the moment instinctively. No more bluffs. Now came the bite. The Nox Eternus launched a second strike, but again, it wasn't a missile. It was something far more human, a data trap masked in Earth's digital chaos. Hidden inside? A virus, primitive by Varn standards, obsolete by Earth's. Written in outdated C++ code so ugly no Varn AI would even recognize it as a threat. They didn't. That was the point. The Varn locked onto false targets. Thousands of drone husks and freighter fragments, shaped like ships. What they saw was a fleet of ghosts, a phantom armada called from the dark. It gave Earth 10 seconds. 10 seconds before the deception crumbled. 10 seconds to strike. That was all they needed. Every ship across the scattered human defense grid surged forward. Not in straight lines, not in polished arcs of discipline. They moved like wasps from a shattered nest, spinning, jinking, darting unpredictably, each on a suicidal course with death and defiance. The Reapers hit first, drones spinning in impossible spirals, bursting with EMPs that cracked open Varn shields just long enough for physical payloads to do the rest. No targeting systems, no laser locks, just raw speed, raw impact. A mile-long Varn cruiser shuddered as a uranium slug tore straight through its core. One moment, majestic. The next, split open like a crushed soda can, debris hissing into the void. Inside the Nox Eternus, Jackson watched the chaos unfold. Cora Hell gasped again. "They're scattering. Sir, their precision's failing." "They weren't built for this," Jackson muttered. "They were built for domination, for fear, for overwhelming power. But not for chaos." Earth's fleet was a Frankenstein's monster of generations of war. Old Cold War tech retrofitted to fire from orbit. Prototype railguns guided by recycled AI. Civilian freighters with nuclear slingshot bombs welded to their hulls. And hidden among them, Spectre, still cold, still silent, still waiting. The Varn began to recalibrate, realizing the battlefield was slipping out of their control. Their elite formations faltered. Orders broke apart. One wing turned inward too sharply and collided with its own shield perimeter. Earth's fleet didn't push. Not yet. They cut, slashed, jammed targeting signals, dropped debris clouds to hide movement, turned space itself into a weapon. "Weapons heat critical," barked engineering. "Shut down secondaries," Jackson replied. "Focus all power on forward drive and stealth shielding." Cora blinked. "You want to run?" "No," he said, a grin forming at the edge of his mouth. "I want them to think we're dead." He grabbed the rail. "Kill thrusters, cut lights, let the hull drift." The Nox Eternus went dark. Outside, to the Varn, it was just another wreck. A dead hunk of metal, listing, venting plasma, tumbling in the void. But inside, the crew didn't move, didn't breathe too hard. They waited, watched. And beneath them, the biggest Varn dreadnought, twice the length of Manhattan, slowly passed overhead, unaware. "Now," Jackson whispered. The stealth systems flared to life for one last sprint, a ghost rising from the ashes. They slid under the dreadnought, just beneath the belly of the beast, so close they could see the shimmering pulse of its shield harmonics. "Target locked," Cora said. "Arm the grav spike," Jackson ordered. The grav spike was illegal in half the galaxy. It didn't explode. It collapsed. A localized implosion device that twisted gravity inward like a god's clenched fist. "Charge at 30, Tom," said the weapons officer, sweating. "30's enough," Jackson muttered. "We're not tearing it apart, just snapping the spine." The weapon launched. There was no flash, no boom, just folding. The Varn dreadnought buckled like paper. Its spinal hull cracked with a seismic jolt. Entire decks crumpled in on themselves. Fires erupted from its engines. And the battlefield went quiet. Not in sound, space had none. But through every sensor, every feed, every system, the galaxy felt the vibration of something impossible. One human ship had just crippled a Varn god. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, Spectre's lights began to glow red. The ghosts had arrived. Part 4, the spike beneath the giant. The silence was staggering. Across the stars, fleets paused. Not in ceasefire, but in disbelief. One of the Varn's dreadnoughts, a vessel of myth and terror, was dying. Not in glory, not in command, but in confusion. Inside the Nox Eternus, alarms flared. The ship had given everything it had to get that close. Stealth systems overheating, coolant leaking into the life support grid, inertial dampeners failing. The hull creaked like the rib cage of some ancient beast. Jackson gripped the side rail. "Damage report?" "Everything," came the quick reply. "We're running on sparks and swears." "Then we've got just enough," he muttered. They'd played dead, struck like assassins, and now they were truly vulnerable. No shields, no thrust, a visible power signature rising, and worse, they were exposed. The Varn would notice soon. "Shut down everything," Jackson ordered. "Make it look like we're drifting again." Cora's eyes darted to the screens. "They'll detect the spike. They'll know where it came from." "Not if we vanish first." The Nox Eternus powered down again. A dead ship, floating among the ruins it had just created. Its crew held their breath, watching as the massive dreadnought, wounded, groaning, venting fire from its underbelly, drifted slowly toward Earth's inner defense grid. It was still moving, still dangerous. Jackson leaned forward. "Bring us under it again, real slow." Cora blinked. "Sir, we're already at critical mass. One misstep. We end this." There was no dramatic swell of music, no speech, just that single ice-cold sentence. The Nox Eternus slid back beneath the fractured Varn warship like a shark shadow. Inside the weapons bay, another grav spike was loaded, but not aimed at the dreadnought's heart. This one was for the spine. 30% was enough before. Now they needed precision. "Targeting reactor midpoint," said Cora. "Range locked. Pulse harmonics aligned." Fire. The second spike activated, and space crumpled. No explosion, just an invisible punch to physics itself. The Varn dreadnought shuddered violently like a skyscraper yanked sideways. Metal twisted, decks folded in reverse. Entire wings of the vessel imploded before catching fire, then were pulled inside out into the collapsing grav well. Every ship in the area felt it, even those with no sensors, even those blind. It wasn't sound. It was a vibration in the soul. And across the battlefield, the Varn finally broke formation. For the first time in recorded history, their fleets, the legendary phalanxes, the mathematical machine of death, fractured. Jackson stood on the flickering bridge of his dying ship, body swaying with every lurch of the hull. Cora looked to him, voice shaking. "They're scattering." He didn't smile, he didn't speak, because this wasn't victory. It was the beginning of something worse. Out in the void, the Spectre began to move. Until now, it had been watching, waiting. But the chaos unleashed by Nox Eternus was the signal. Its stealth field disengaged, only partially, and blood-red light bloomed across its surface. Not for function, for fear. Every inch of it had been designed to haunt. The Varn saw it, they felt it. A blip, then no blip. Movement that defied logic. Motion that broke AI targeting routines. The Spectre appeared directly behind a Varn destroyer. No fanfare, no laser fire. Just a quantum tunneling torpedo, slipping past shields and straight into the AI core. The ship didn't explode. It collapsed. From the inside out, the destroyer folded inwards, its systems frying, engines silent. And then gone. No wreckage, just vacuum. The Varn's confusion turned to panic. More ships twisted their vectors, spinning to face an enemy they couldn't track. Others fired blindly into the void. Still others retreated from positions they'd held for centuries, afraid of what they couldn't name. Admiral Thorne, back on Earth's command station, saw the feeds light up. Varn formations flickering, command nodes going dark, elite ships breaking protocol to escape unknown threats. She stood. "Send the message," she said. The communications officer turned. "What message, Admiral?" Her eyes narrowed. "Tell them humanity just got started." Back on Nox Eternus, Cora looked up from her console, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, there's something happening across their lines." Jackson already knew. He could feel it in his bones. It wasn't the destruction of one dreadnought. It was the realization that Earth wasn't trying to win. Earth was trying to make them bleed. And in that moment, every human ship still left alive surged forward, not for conquest, not for glory, but to break the myth. Part 5, Spectre Awakens. In the deepest shadows of Jupiter's magnetic field, Spectre drifted like death incarnate. No lights, no pings, no signal trails, not even heat. To every sensor ever built, alien or human, it was nothing more than another fragment of battlefield wreckage. But inside it pulsed with quiet violence. Commander Nyla Voss stood in the heart of the ship, connected to the Wraith, an illegal, quasi-sentient AI embedded directly into her neural cortex. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe heavy. Her eyes flicked through streams of live feeds, fractured Varn formations, burning wrecks, and one particularly satisfying detonation from the Nox Eternus. Wraith whispered into her skull, They're starting to feel fear. Not yet, she replied coldly, but they will. She gave the order. Light it up! Spectre's stealth drive disengaged for the first time in the battle, and its hull lit with a deep crimson glow. The light wasn't for function, it was psychological warfare. Red, blood red, the color of defiance, the color of fury. Every inch of Spectre was designed to haunt. Angular armor that bent radar signals the wrong way. Thrusters that pulsed in chaotic patterns. A silhouette that didn't match any known ship profile. It didn't glide like a warship. It slithered through the void like a blade across glass. And the Varn saw it. Hundreds of command officers turned in unison across their fleet. Unregistered threat detected. No signature, no command ID, unknown physics on engine trails. The AI tried to process it. They couldn't. Spectre vanished before the first weapons lock completed. And then, it reappeared, right behind a Varn command carrier. The torpedo it launched didn't target the hull. It targeted the ship's central AI core, bypassing shields entirely through quantum tunneling. The detonation wasn't visible. It was existential. The carrier spasmed, systems locking, engines igniting out of sequence, weapons turning inward. Then it simply collapsed. Not exploded, imploded. Spectre vanished again. The Varn's sleek, elegant battle network fractured further. Communications bled static. Coordination died, and Spectre danced through the chaos like a ghost, silent, deadly, untraceable. Behind each kill, it left questions. What was it? Who crewed it? How many more were there? And that's when the real weapon activated, uncertainty. Inside the Nox Attorneys, Jackson Rhee stared at the screen. He saw the detonation, an entire command carrier folded into itself, and nodded. That'll get their attention. Cora turned to him, mouth open. Sir, that ship, it's not just killing them. I know, it's making them doubt. Yes, Jackson said, and that's our real weapon. Across Earth's scattered fleets, the surviving warships surged forward, not to finish the fight, but to deepen the wounds. They didn't target strategic nodes. They hit fuel lines, exhaust vents, life support backups. They aimed to cripple, to disorient, to humiliate. One Varn frigate turned its guns on a friendly cruiser, fooled by a cloaked corvette bouncing heat signals through asteroid debris. Another tried to retreat, only to explode in a minefield laid 2 hours earlier by disguised civilian freighters. Make them bleed, Admiral Thorne ordered from Earth Command. Don't fight to win, fight to destroy their belief in winning. And so Earth's fury surged. But even as victory's scent began to stir, Nyla Voss knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. She stood on Spectre's dim bridge, watching a slow scroll of data from a research station. A place she'd once called home, now turned to charred glass by a pinpoint orbital strike. Her jaw clenched. Her eyes didn't water, but Wraith felt it inside her cortex. They're trying to break you. They don't know how far past broken I already am, she whispered. Behind her, the crew was silent. No ranks, no uniforms, just operators. Black ops, ex-cons, cybernetic whisperers, ghosts. The kind of people the world pretended didn't exist until now. They weren't here to survive. They were here to haunt the enemy forever. And they weren't done yet. Far across the stars, the Varn High Council watched through fractured feeds, trying to compute what they were seeing. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was something worse. A message. And Spectre, that impossible glowing nightmare, was the punctuation mark. One final movement remained. Nyla's voice, soft but clear. Prepare the core. Wraith hummed. Oblivion? She didn't answer, because some things didn't need answers. Part 6, Oblivion Protocol. It wasn't a strategy. It wasn't a weapon. It was a promise. If Earth burns, then so will the stars. They called it Oblivion Protocol, not because it could win wars, but because it wasn't meant to. It was never designed to defeat the enemy. It was built to make sure no one walked away. Inside the Nox Eternus, Jackson Rhee stared at the smoldering projections of Earth's orbit. Entire sectors were aflame. Defense satellites gone. Orbital towers cut in half by precision strikes. Cities, his cities, shattered under fire so clean and cruel it was surgical. The Varn weren't conquering. They were punishing. His childhood neighborhood outside Nairobi no longer existed. No military value, no strategic relevance, just vengeance. And in the belly of Spectre, Nyla Voss watched similar footage of a ruined research lab where she once worked. She hadn't been back in years, but the Varn had. They had found it, targeted it, erased it. Wraith's voice was quiet in her skull. They're targeting memories. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The message was clear. This is what defiance costs. But Earth's answer was different. Across encrypted channels no one had used in over 20 years, one word echoed: oblivion. It was a ghost file, a myth, a bluff whispered between paranoid generals during the first Cold War with Mars. Back when civil war among colonies had nearly shattered Earth from within. The kind of weapon you build to scare yourself into peace. But peace was gone, and the galaxy was now a battlefield where myths had their place. Deep beneath Antarctica, in a forgotten black site called Black Echo, systems hummed back to life. The staff, ghosts, the architecture, obsolete. But the payload, eternal. Sealed behind 17 biometric failsafes was a sphere no larger than a football, smooth, silver, unmarked. The first Oblivion core, an artificial singularity seed, not a bomb, a tear, a rift in space, designed to collapse a local gravity well inward, consuming anything and everything in a controlled implosion of reality. It had never been tested. Now it was being deployed. No vote, no delay, just a voice. Admiral Ra Thorns, calm and absolute. Spectre, you're the only one fast and quiet enough. You deliver it. Understood, came Nyla's voice, steady as stone. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask for odds or projections. She just locked the core into its cradle, nodded to her crew, and said one word: run silent. Through the burning debris of the battlefield, Spectre moved. Not like a ship, like a rumor. The Varn fired wildly, their systems overwhelmed by ghost signatures and phantom targets. But none hit. Inside Nox Eternus, Jackson opened a private channel. You sure about this? Nyla's face flickered onto the screen. She didn't look at him. Didn't need to. Not even a little. He smiled, a tired, broken thing. Try not to die before the fireworks. She didn't promise. She just disappeared. Spectre reappeared directly behind the Judicator, the Varn's primary command vessel. 2 miles long, covered in anti-ship turrets, gravity cannons, and plasma shields that had shrugged off asteroid collisions. None of that mattered. The Oblivion core was activated. It didn't explode. It formed, a black sphere the size of a marble, silent, cold, humming with a gravity that should not exist, dropped from Spectre's belly. The Varn detected it 1 second too late. Every gun fired. Every cannon screamed. Every AI tried to stop it. All missed. The Judicator trembled, then folded. Not shattered, not vaporized. Folded inward, like paper and fire. Its command deck crumpled, then its engines, then the hull. The entire ship twisted, bent, snapped. Then, gone. No wreckage, just void. A silence deeper than death. Across the Varn fleet, everything changed. Perfect formations stuttered. Command nodes blinked out. Some ships retreated immediately, vanishing into subspace. Others froze, trying to recalculate against a threat that no longer obeyed their laws of physics. Admiral Thorne's voice rang out across every human frequency. Let this be a message. Earth does not surrender. Earth does not forgive. And Earth does not forget. But even in the rush of triumph, Jackson stood still. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't cheering. He was staring at the black spot where the Judicator had once ruled. Cora, he said quietly, and what's the damage? The ship's AI answered, slower than usual. Spatial integrity compromised. Gravity flux increasing. Local sector destabilizing. Possible rift forming. He closed his eyes. They hadn't just destroyed a warship. They'd torn open space. We just lit a match in a dry forest, Cora whispered. Jackson opened his eyes again. Hard, cold, unblinking. Now we wait to see what burns next. Part 7, we lit a fire. At first there was silence. Then came the pulse. Where the Judicator had once existed, a ripple spread. Silent, invisible, but undeniable. Sensors across the system glitched. Gravity monitors screamed errors. Temporal scanners blinked erratic values. The Nox Eternus shuddered. Jackson gripped the edge of the console, his eyes narrowing. Report. The AI, recently rebooted, spoke in a halting voice. Singularity remains active, gravity flux expanding, local causality destabilizing. Causality? Cora said, her voice tight. It means, Jackson replied, his voice grim, we didn't just destroy space, we broke the rules it was written in. The rift wasn't closing, it was growing. From Spectre, Nyla Voss watched through a filtered viewport. The black sphere at the center of the breach no longer looked like a wound. It looked like an eye, an opening. And behind it, not stars, not galaxies. Shapes, too large, too slow, too precise. Planets that spun in impossible arcs. Moons that orbited nothing. Colors that didn't belong to any known spectrum. And eyes, so many eyes watching without blinking. Commander, Wraith whispered inside her mind, its tone unusually subdued. This is not war. This is invitation. She didn't answer, not yet. On Nox Eternus, a new signal broke through encrypted frequencies. Not from the Varn, not from Earth, from somewhere else. Audio? No, but it felt like a scream, played backwards. Reversed, layered, echoed 1,000 times over. Put it through, Jackson ordered. Cora hesitated. Sir, we don't even know if it's safe. Do it. The ship's comms cracked, then hissed, then groaned like something lying in deep water. A sound like ice breaking inside a skull. One crewman dropped. Another began bleeding from the nose. The AI crashed, rebooted, then spoke a single line. This entity exceeds universal constants. Recommend evacuation of consciousness. Cora stared. Evacuation of what? Jackson didn't reply, because he understood. This wasn't an enemy. This wasn't even a creature. This was a consequence. In that moment, every fleet in the system, from Earth's ragtag warships to the fractured remnants of the Varn, stopped. There was nothing left to shoot. No strategy, no battle plan, no defense against what had just awakened. And in the middle of it all, Jackson Rhee and Nyla Voss stood still, not from fear, from understanding. They had screamed into the dark, and something had screamed back. Inside Spectre, the bridge lights dimmed. One by one, consoles began to fail. Wraith's voice grew quieter. This isn't invasion, this is judgment. Nyla stared into the rift. The breach pulsed again, slower now, like a heart, a black heart, beating at the center of a wrong universe. They see us, Wraith whispered, and they are curious. She felt it too, not fear. Not yet, something deeper, recognition. Because what had awoken on the other side didn't just hear them, it understood. And now it was coming through. Part wait, we are remembered. The breach pulsed again, not with heat, not with force, but with presence, a gravity that dragged at the soul. The entity had no name, no shape that the human brain could comprehend, but its arrival bent time, twisted light, and unraveled thought. On the Nox Eternus, the crew dropped to their knees. Some unconscious, others trembling in silence. The AI flickered into shutdown. Lights dimmed, systems froze. Cora gasped, her hands on her head. I can hear it in my mind. Jackson didn't speak. Not yet, not until he knew what had to be done. On Spectre, Nyla Voss remained upright. Barely. Her mind was stretched to its limits. But she wasn't alone. Wraith, her AI, held her thoughts together like threads of a shattered tapestry. And in that swirling cosmic madness, she understood something. They weren't here to destroy, they were here to correct. Because in the eyes of this thing, this ancient force, humanity had broken something fundamental. We had created what no species dared, a synthetic singularity. We had committed a crime far worse than war. We had played God. And now the gods were watching. Inside the rift, inside the rift, the entity unfurled, not like a creature, but like a truth being revealed. Shapes too large, too perfect. Patterns etched into the cosmos. Logic that turned stars into strings. It wasn't conquest. It was cleanup. An erasure, not as punishment, but as necessity. Jackson moved slowly to the helm. Every muscle screamed. Every instinct said run. But he was beyond instinct now. Cora, he said, voice firm, calm, grounded. Broadcast, not to the fleet, not to the Varn. She looked up, bleeding from one ear. To who? He looked at her. To it. On Spectre, Nyla stood as well. Her body shook, her vision blurred, but her thoughts were clear. She turned to Wraith. Link to me, fully. Full fusion is irreversible, Wraith warned. You'll burn out in hours. Then let me burn. She stepped forward, reached into the console, and in that moment, she and the AI were no longer separate. They were one, and they spoke together. Two signals, two minds, Jackson Rhee and Nyla Voss, sent not through to technology, but intention. Through pain, memory, defiance. One message, we lit the fire, let us carry it. The breach responded, not in sound, not in words, but in something deeper, curiosity. The entity paused. For the first time it hesitated, not because it feared, but because it saw something unexpected. Audacity. And then the breach blinked. The light vanished, the pull receded. The rift closed, like an eye that had seen enough. Silence. Across Earth's fleet, across the broken Varn armada, there was only static. Then breath. Then life. We're alive? Cora whispered. Jackson didn't reply. He didn't need to. He just stood, and stared at the place where the breach had been. On Spectre, Nyla slumped into her chair. Her body was failing. Wraith flickered, scattered across corrupted memory. But they had done it, not stopped the thing, not defeated it, but been seen, and not erased. Across the galaxy, the Varn retreated. Not in defeat, in confusion, because they had faced a species that didn't fear death. That would break the stars just to prove a point. That screamed into the void and survived the echo. They hadn't fought humans, they had fought something else. The myth. And from that day forward, one name burned through the stars. Humanity. Not for victory, but for the madness, the rage, and the glorious defiance that made even the cosmos hesitate.